Yes, there is a congressional race or two, and we'll focus in on that and a whole bunch more tonight. We're busy on a Monday. Welcome into my State of Mind. I am Dan York. It's a pleasure and honor to have you aboard. Always a little shaky when the Giants lose on Sunday. It takes me a little while to recover. This is not good. 3-4 for the year and going into the bye. Oh, well, what are you going to do? Okay, I'm over it. Let's move on. By the way, we're moving your State of Mind up permanently, at least semi-permanently, so that you get more interactive in my rundown segment. I'll explain in just a second. And it's a format change of sorts. We're tinkering around. After a year, you play around with the product a little bit. Rhue Reis will be my guest. He is a congressman candidate in the 2nd District, running against Jim Langevin. He's been here before, and he's doing it again. So stay with us. All righty, here's what we have tonight. Big press conference with the nurses union today, and you're not going to like what the survey says. In Texas, they're starting to clear out some folks from the quarantines that they've had to deal with the Ebola situation. National spotlight on the mayor's race with Meet the Press, and some real weird stuff going on with the opponent to Buddy Cianci on the Republican side, Mr. Dan Harrop. That would be the next page. Let's move along if we can. There we go. And hey, you got to admit, he is, and yes, your State of Mind now comes up earlier in the program. So we get a little more interactive, a little quicker in the show. All right, first item here this evening to dig into our rundown. Nurses survey says, here's the headline on WPRI.com, we're not ready. Now this is the second in 2 working days public cry from the nurses who say, we're just not as prepared as Rhode Island administration members would like to say we are, including Dr. Fine, who is the head of the Department of Health. Here are 3, can I just show you some of these little graphs? This came in the press release, and it might be tough for you to read, but the gray is the largest response area to the following questions. I got 3 of them here for you. So the nurses union posed a question to all of its members over the last few days. The first is, do you believe the hospital or facility in which you work is adequately prepared to accept and treat a patient who tests positive for Ebola? See that whole big gray area? That's the not prepared response. 53% of the nurses said, I don't think so. Less than 1% said, yes, absolutely, we're prepared. Second question, do you believe the hospital or facility in which you work is adequately communicated with the appropriate procedures and protocol for treating a patient who's got the Ebola virus? The response was not so good. The yellow is the number of people who said, we've talked about it, but not in great detail. And then the other blue portion, the number of nurses who said, we haven't heard anything about it, communication protocol-wise at all. Only 3% said yes. And then the last question is, should your hospital or facility receive a patient who has tested positive for Ebola, do you believe you'll have the access to the appropriate protective equipment? And that blue area, that green-blue area there, nearly 60% say nope. And that yellow area is, I don't know. Only 7% of the nurses said, yeah, I think so. I think we have the proper equipment. It's bad. It's bad. Dr. Michael Fine, who has said Rhode Island leads the league in the country in terms of Ebola preparedness, is nowhere to be found. Nowhere. After Friday's discussion with the Professional Association on the radio, where they said more or less the same thing, couldn't find him. Couldn't find him today in response to this press conference. So I asked Linda McDonald, who heads the nurses union, what do you got to do? You got to show these guys up in order to shame them out of their offices?
I guess what I'm asking is, do you have to show up the governor and the director of health in order to be able to get the action that you're looking for? Because this is, you're smiling because you understand what wouldn't it be natural for a nurses association and for the union itself to say to Dr. Fine, hey, listen, we got the survey. A couple of days from now, we're going to have to go public with this. Can we get on the same page before we have to show each other up and create a scenario where people are just wondering who the hell is in charge?
We're coming forward. It's the same message that I've been saying for the last few minutes. It's to present the needs and concerns by a survey and what we're hearing our members say from the frontline caregivers, and I look forward to discussing this with the governor, with Dr. Fine, with the docs and administrators. I think you've been hearing sounds of alarm throughout this country from direct caregiver organizations, unions, non-unions, the ANA, stating that we need more open dialogue, clearer protocols in order for the frontline caregivers to feel safe to protect the workers, to protect the patients, and ultimately the public.
Still, you know, at press time, nothing from the Department of Health at this point, and they've got to recognize that their public relations game is not one-sided. You don't proclaim that we're the best prepared in the nation, and then when you're questioned by your own nurses, not respond publicly. We'll see. The clock's ticking on that one. In the meantime, the national story here is that, you know, out of Texas, things are starting to calm down a little bit. Fortunately, Thomas Eric Duncan, who came from Liberia to Texas, lost his life, and his nephew writes a scathing piece in the Dallas News. Here's the headline on that one. Just saying, listen, my uncle didn't have to die. The treatment was terrible, and we didn't even know what his status was. There's no way he should have been sent home packing when he said he had been in West Africa the first time he showed up at the hospital. And it's worth a read anyway. Here's the latest from CBS on the family that actually is past the deadline now.
The confinement is over for the fiancé of Thomas Eric Duncan, the Liberian man who was the first person diagnosed with Ebola in the U.S. Louise Troe and 3 family members are now free after being kept under armed guard in quarantine for 21 days. Duncan was staying at Troe's apartment when he first started showing symptoms of the virus. Ebola is also no longer a threat for 44 others who had some contact with Duncan.
It's been very difficult. You know, you've got this uncertainty that's hanging over your head.
The CDC is monitoring about 400 people for Ebola symptoms nationwide.
All right, so that's a wrap up on Ebola. Things feel like they've calmed down a little bit, but they haven't in Africa, where it's just multiplying by 2.5 times the number of diagnosed patients out there. The CDC's guesstimate and the WHO's estimate is that 2.5 times those who have known to have the disease are acquiring it. It's a race. All right, let's come home and talk about some of the politics here. National Spotlight, Meet the Press does a thing on Buddy Cianci and 2 others who just can't live without being elected, so to speak. Here was the headline, and Meet the Press's, well, here's the local coverage of the Meet the Press headline. Of course, the Journal's been whacking Cianci pretty perpetually. We did have a website picture of the coverage, right? Yes, addicted to office. I asked Cianci about that today on the radio. I don't have time really to play his responses, but I shall probably over the course of the week, no doubt. It's been kind of a weird deal, though, man. What's happened here is that while Jorge Elorza, the candidate who's reportedly in second place in the polls, has been pretty modest about this Meet the Press detention and everything else, Dan Harrop, the Republican, has kind of lost it. He reacts by saying, you know, this guy's been a 2-time felon, and guess what? He's also got a rape allegation, so now the rape word has come out. And Cianci responded to that on the radio today as well. We'll cover that again as it goes. My guess is that more media is going to weigh in on this old allegation that Harrop feels like he can just wing. And right now, he's freewheeling. We'll go to the next item here. Dan Harrop is acting a little weird. You know, when you're independently wealthy and you got no shot to win, there's a kind of a freedom that goes along with that. Now he's acted in a very strange way. This Republican who polls at 8% in the race, he's given $1,000 to the guy who's got 32%. The WPRI.com headline, good work on the part of the team over there. Yeah, he donates $1,000 to Jorge Elorza. Even the Republican executive director, who was here just the other day, Rob Paquin, is horrified over this and says it was the absolute wrong thing for the Republican Harrop to do. If he wanted to step out and endorse someone else, that's fine, but, you know, messing around like this, I'm paraphrasing, just is bad form. And I can't agree more. All right, speaking of form, he certainly has it. You have to say, even though you may not be a Bronco or a Colts fan, he is the best. The headline here, Peyton Manning passes Brett Favre. He did it in grand style. He needed 3 passes, touchdown passes, to get it done last night on Sunday Night Football. versus the 49ers. He got 4. Incredible. And then he spoke after.
I've always been a fan of quarterbacks, whether it's, Brett Favre or Dan Marino or John Elway. And so I'm very honored and humbled to join, a pretty unique club.
Yep. Guess what? You didn't join a club. You left the club. You're now number 1. You're the all-time touchdown passer. You can't argue with the best. Congratulations to him. All right, time for your state of mind. I'd like to actually move your feedback up in the broadcast, and that's what we're doing now. You can call us at 228-1886 and respond to anything I just said or what you've heard from others. Email me at stateofmind@myratv.com, and of course, Facebook post or tweet at Dan York Show, YORKE. Here's a Facebook post on the governor's race. Says, Eric, unless you want things to stay the way they are, you're wasting your vote. I'm voting for Healy. That'd be Bob Healy, because that's all he's asking for. Real change and common sense solutions. Well, those 3 characters are still running for office. By the way, it was really funny. Did you see that Alan Fung today had an Ebola press conference? The only mayor to have an Ebola press conference. Why was he having an Ebola press conference? Because he's running for governor. When we come back, Rhue Reis running for Congress. Stay with us. Yes, with all the attention to the governor and mayor's races, the attorney general's race, which is so important, the treasurer's race, we have 2 congressional races. And as I've told you in the past, we've got 2 very viable candidates on the Republican side. I don't know how much attention you've been paying to this. Here's the former headline where Rhue Reis on the right is going after the incumbent Jim Langevin. Welcome. Always good to see you.
Pleasure to be here.
You're
Thank you for
frustrated
asking.
by this being under the radar screen as much as it has been, this race?
No, I'm not. I'm actually hoping that we don't see any polls or anything and that we just go right to the finish line, wondering what's going to happen, because, I'd hate for something to come out and show that this is going to be a close race, and then he starts pouring all kinds of money in it, because he can, I can't.
Right.
So no, let it fly under the radar.
I've seen the script before, and enthusiastic, talented guys like you end up getting well up by 35 points. And I don't want to predict that. You never know. It's been the weirdest 2014 I've ever seen. Campaign cycle in 2014. But I've always thought that you are an energetic, smart, and capable guy to be the congressman. How much time have you had to engage with Jim Langevin? And have you had any debates out there?
We had one debate on State of the State, and it was just a half-hour show. Very difficult to get a back and forth going, but I felt very good about the way I came out of that debate. Of course, with Mr. Langevin's positions, you really have a hard time figuring out exactly what his position is. So there's no doubt what my positions are, and so I think people find that refreshing, and I don't care where I am. People are going to know where I stand.
Right. In case people are not aware, Rhue is a manager at a casino in Connecticut, Foxwoods.
Foxwoods Resorts.
Also been involved as a contractor and that kind of stuff.
That's correct.
So that's been your life work. You'll give up being the pit boss if you become a congressman.
Yeah, we're very excited to do so.
So what is it that you think is driving the conversation? I mean, we've been inundated by an Ebola crisis in the country, right? The ISIS worry on a foreign policy basis kind of gets a second seat to this disease worry, which may now start to temper a little bit, we hope, who knows. We got a crazy mayor's race, and we got a governor's race that's got a lot of attention to the media. So where do you wedge in, and what do you have to say to people to get their attention for this race?
Well, have we even heard from our delegation?
Not much.
We have not heard any response on any issue. And this is why I think the people are tired of it. I think the people are understanding that they don't have much of a representation in Washington. That's the one thing that I have to offer as a Republican candidate, is they will always know where I stand, and I will always be willing to hear where the people...
Well, what do you think the delegation should have been doing on what? The Ebola thing?
Absolutely.
The ISIS thing?
We have not gotten a concrete strategy on the situation down on the southern border. We still don't know where those kids are going and how many of them are still coming in here. and how we're going to deal with it. We haven't gotten any kind of an effective strategy on how we're going to deal with the continued momentum of ISIS, even though airstrikes seems to be having an effect, but it's certainly not going to drive them out of the cities. And now Ebola. It's like when you hear the international medical community talking about the crisis that's going on there in Western Africa, you can fully understand that we need to put a safety net over this. And yet, it doesn't seem to be too concerning to our current administration, and our delegation follows lockstep and barrel to the administration.
So you're sitting in Congress, you would have been doing what now, say, in the Ebola situation? Demanding travel restrictions, what?
I would have, absolutely.
What about the arguments that they're counterproductive?
You know, that's like saying the CDC is effective in dealing with the situation here, that they're counterproductive. Where's that coming from? I mean, anyone who wants to go, any medical expert that wants to go and help with the situation in Western Africa has to understand that they're not going to just jump on a plane and come back when they feel like it. I mean, they need to be cleared to leave. And that's the way it should be for everyone who's over there in that environment.
All right. So you want a quarantine of 21 days before
Yes.
before you travel, and how are you going to set up? How are you going to set up just regular civilian quarantines prior to getting on a plane? What are you going to? How are you going to do that? I mean, they don't have the structure right now to put kids into tents to try to save their lives.
Well, we can't just put them on planes and send them all over the world, can we?
Well, I don't know that that's happening, right?
What, do you just interview somebody and says, have you been in a hot zone? Have you been exposed? And they say, no, of course not. Look, I look fine. Let me jump on a plane. In the meantime, they were sitting over there with their uncle, and their uncle, wasn't fine. So we need to have a process. Do I know what it is? Listen, I'm working as a contractor, and I'm working at Foxwoods. Certainly, Mr. Langevin should know what can and can't happen. He's on the subcommittee. He's the ranking member of the subcommittee on intelligence and emerging threats. Shouldn't he have some? Why can't we get any word from him?
All right,
Yeah.
I'll leave that as a rhetorical question. The key issues Rhue Reis wants you to think about in this election, and we come back. Stay with us. Oh my goodness! I was just asking Rhue if he had a TV ad campaign, and your response was
Absolutely not.
absolutely not. So, where do people find in the common ground with you to consider you for a vote for 2nd District Congressperson?
I'm a realist. I understand how the whole thing works at the ballot box. Where's all the attention going in this election year? All the attention's going to the governor's race. That's where all the attention is.
And the mayor's race.
Yeah, of course, now that Buddy's in it. So that's where all the attention is. So when people go to vote, and fortunately for me, I'm right near the top of the ballot. I'm the second race on the ballot. First race is the senator's race with Jack Reed and Mark Siccaria, and then there's Jim Langevin and myself, and then the governor. So people are going to go through my race to get to the governor's vote. And that being said, since they're so focused on the governor's race, the majority of voters don't even pay attention to what the two candidates' issues are and where they stand on the issues. So I recognize that there's going to be a strong anti-incumbent vote. And we're going to need a bit of name recognition to get people to decide to pick me. So I looked at how much money I had. I basically got one shot in the gun, and I put all my money in this billboard truck, a lighted billboard truck.
Okay, how's that working out?
It just went on the road last week. I'll tell you what, I've been to a few events, and I've had numbers of people saying, oh, I saw your name on a truck.
Yeah.
And so that's the key. The key is
The billboard truck?
the key is that they recognize my name. And that's the one thing I do have as a blessing, is that I have that kind of name
You do.
that when you see it and hear it,
There's no doubt
you
about
don't
that.
forget it.
So when they walk into the ballot box on November 4th, if I don't get the chance to talk to you again between now and then, and they see your unique name in the second position on the ballot, they're going to think what in 60 seconds or less?
They're going to think, Well, that's somebody different. Never seen that name before. You know what? Time for some new blood in Washington.
For the sake of it.
Yeah. I'm voting for the other guy. I gotta tell you, that other guy vote's gonna work really well for me. You know, reality tells me I don't have a chance, but my gut, and I go on my gut a lot, tells me I'm gonna win this thing.
But they're not going to have an issue that they grab onto when it comes to you? It's just going to be the other guy?
If they know me, if they've had the opportunity to research me and hear me out
Yeah.
and to check some of my videos,
Yes.
then they will no doubtedly choose me.
Well, here's again, now 20 seconds. Rhue Reis means what when you vote for him?
Well, Rhue Reis means you're going to get a strong response to any issue, and you're going to know where he stands, and he's going to listen to you. And there's no doubt about that. I did a nice meeting with high school kids today at Tollgate. And I was so appreciative of that.
Do you think
And they
you got their vote?
warmed up to me. Well, you know what?
The
There were a
seniors,
few
maybe.
18 years old there.
All right.
Hopefully I'll get their parents' votes.
All right. Good to see you.
You
Appreciate
too, Dan.
coming out.
Thank you.
Rhue Reis for Congress, running against Landstrom. One more thought. Thanks. One more thought. This was really cool over the weekend. Deb and I went to the duck race. You know, the little duck race? Check out the teamwork here. Helps the volunteers and the boys club and beyond take the 17,000 plus ducks that finished the race down the Blackstone and get them into barrels and get them out of there with no duckies or debris left. I love this. I love it when a community event gets together. That's me taking video over the edge of the river. Anyway, it's a great project. Hey, we will be on at 10:30 tomorrow night after the news on My Ride TV with the mayor's race thing, and then Wednesday we got a lieutenant governor's debate. Bye.